As long as we just don't respond to them.
It's just the gap with the girls' names.
Okay.
More training needed.
There we go.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good morning. My name is Lenore McMullen-Levin. I'm a CTRS licensed nursing home administrator, QA, QI program designer for corporations like Goodwin House and Manor Care and so on. I've been in business forever. I am here to ask you to review some of the laws that are used against the vulnerable, old, disabled people and poor in divorces and the abuse laws. I was a victim of abuse during 21 years of marriage in Fairfax County. I grew up in Virginia. I've been here for almost my whole life. I've lived in Norfolk. My dad was a Commodore in the Navy, so we were in Norfolk, and I've lived in Arlington and the Fairfax County part of Alexandria, and my husband and I lived in the city of Alexandria. So I just hope that you'll review or study the 50-50 equitable distribution to bring us in line with our neighbors, Maryland and DC. My sorority sister in Maryland didn't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars she didn't have to get 50% of all the assets. She got alimony, child support, the Bethesda house. So, I just would ask that you all just kind of review that stuff. My forensic CPA found him pocketing $200,000 after I went out in the ambulance with my 4 broken bones, damaged SI, bruises, and so on to the ER at Fairfax. And, there isn't any accommodation for any of that kind of stuff. But if you're poor, you don't get the good lawyers. And so the not so good lawyers don't get you a PO. And the criteria for all of that, you might ask someone to study, because the super lawyer didn't think she could get a PO, with me, with all those problems and police officers saying, get out before he kills you, and and we have to come back with a wagon. It's just, so it's the 50-50 law. The $3,000 cap is impoverishing us old ladies that get kicked out. And I'm homeless. I had a voucher, but they took it away when I got my $3,000. So I just wanted to ask you to please kind of review those laws, and most importantly, the lockout law. It's probably meant for people that rent, and It's used by rich multimillionaires with good lawyers to lock you out of your home in Great Falls. He awarded it for $300, and you're out in the streets. It's just kind of crazy, and I'm not the only one. There are so many others, but and just kind of massage some of that PO criteria, because she didn't think she could, and I had, you know, a million. All of Reston police officers know us by first name because they came so many times, because he kept calling them, and you know, trying to get me detained or whatever. It's just craziness. And you know, I've worked 4 years and contributed on nonprofit boards like the Independence Center. I'm usually here as a board member saying thank you for the support of the SILs, all 18 of them, because they're really, really
Thank you.
wonderful. And the Senior Center of Great Falls and all those senior centers, thank you so much for your support.
No, thank you for taking the time to come here today. Use the elevator. Okay.
Hello.
Thank you, Ms. Levin. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Here. So you're Mr. Haven?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and after Mr. Haven is Krista Gauthier. Is Krista here? Okay, come on down because you're going to follow her. Margaret Gorham. Okay, you'll be the third. All right.
All right. Hello, my name's Angela D. Haven. I've lived in Annandale, Virginia for about 8 years, and I'm under Senator Sesla and Delegate Corey. Thank you for holding this hearing and giving me the opportunity to address you. In March of 2019, a CPS social worker took my 3 nonverbal, low-functioning autistic children from their loving home because our boys' social worker made a false report to CPS. This report was made to CPS by the social worker's own admission that she was frustrated that our children were not getting the services they needed. Without due process of law, our children were taken because the CPS social worker agreed we do need help. Obviously, my definition of help and the government's definition are very different. With much fight and refusing to give up, our children were returned home within 2 weeks of this incident. However, since then, I have learned of many other families that have had their children taken by CPS for similar reasons, and the children have still not been returned. It is clear to me that CPS cares a great deal more about wasting government funds and increasing the reported cases at the expense of children's lives. I tell this story to beg and plead with each of you to stop government overreach of parental and individual rights. Do not take children from their homes because there is a gun in the home. I do agree that guns should be put in gun lockers and away from children. However, the right to own a gun by any law-respecting person is guaranteed by the United States Constitution and should not be infringed by local or federal government. Do not take our parental rights. Do not take our parental rights by vaccinating our children without our consent. To get the best vaccine outcomes, parents should not be excluded, as they know the lifelong medical history of their children and of any previous medical concerns that should be known when their child receives vaccines. I personally don't have a gun in my home and have had children that are vaccinated. However, I I feel that no parent should be stripped of their personal or parental rights to care and protect their family. I feel that parents should have their rights protected to be able to protect and care for their families. If anything, parents need more rights, and I would ask each of you to support a parental rights amendment so that good parents can continue to serve, love, and protect their families. As you approach this new legislative session, I plead that instead of taking rights away, that you give more of those rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. I am proud to live in a republic where rights are guaranteed by a constitution and not in a dictatorship where our rights are stripped away by the greediness of our leaders. May we continue to be blessed by God and live in a land of America where the land is free and the home of the brave. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Gauthier. Next is Ms. Gorham, and following Ms. Gorham is Carly Fisher-Maltese. Carly here? Yes, okay, so you're third in line now. Ms. Gauthier, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Krista Gauthier, and I'm the founder and executive director of Sliding Doors STEM and Dyslexia Learning Center, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of Decoding Dyslexia Virginia. Today we are asking that you co-sponsor and vote yes on 3 bills, all of which are critical to helping students with dyslexia reach their full potential, something that the General Assembly and the Board of Education has put as one of their fundamental goals for students in the Commonwealth. I know that my colleagues at Decoding Dyslexia have done a masterful job already of educating you on the facts about dyslexia, so I want to take today to tell you from my perspective as both a professional in the field and the parent of a child with dyslexia why these bills are important, and the reason may actually surprise you. I think we can all agree that reading is a skill our children need, and that it is morally correct to make sure that they can. However, I think we need to consider these 3 bills looking through a different lens, that of the economic and social impact on all of us. I want to look especially through this lens since cost of programs is often cited as the reason we can't implement, when in actuality, the cost for not helping these students is far greater. The public schools are nowhere near achieving the goal of helping these students reach their full potential. If they were, I would be out of business, and I would not have pulled my child out of Fairfax County Public Schools and put her in private school, a luxury that most people in Fairfax cannot afford. With above average intelligence and propensity for STEM-related fields, the approximately 28,000 students in Fairfax with dyslexia embody the very skills we need in the 21st century. We are in a new age. We are beyond the Industrial Revolution and into the digital one, and our schools have not yet made that transition. We no longer need workers. We need innovators. Innovators like Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, and 35 to 40% of entrepreneurs and creators who have dyslexia. However, because our public schools do not do what they need to help these students, 48% of our prison population has dyslexia. Just think of the economic and social impact we could make if we pass legislation that ensure these children reach their full potential. The 3 bills we are putting forward put us one step closer to doing just that. The first is to add the rapid naming test to literacy screening. A large body of research has shown that the RAN is one of the best identifiers of dyslexia and catches many more students early, a critical step in timely intervention so that students do not lose confidence and stay in education. The second is parent notification and instruction and response intervention. The third is directly tied to STEM, and that is the substitution of coding for foreign language to earn an advanced diploma. Students with above average intelligence should not be denied an advanced diploma and the university spot it can earn just because of their neurodiversity, especially in a time when industry is desperate for coders and innovators. I have one word that sums that up: Amazon. These 3 bills are not just about doing what is right for individual students. Think about what you can do to propel us into the future by co-sponsoring and voting yes to these bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gauthier. All right, Ms. Gorham, you're up, and Carly Fisher-Maltese is following you, and after Ms. Maltese is Duke Dunn, and then Will Rattle. Radel. Go ahead, welcome, Ms.
Thank
Gorham.
you. I am a parent of a Fairfax County public school student who also has dyslexia. I'm here today to encourage you to say dyslexia and hope that when you hear dyslexia again during the next legislative session, you are moved to take action. You and your colleagues may have heard dyslexia in the past and even take action to give hope to those struggling with dyslexia so that they may navigate the education system with a little more success. But there is still much work to be done. Dyslexia affects 1 in 5. That's 20% of the people that you serve. Some have managed to navigate the education system without hearing the word dyslexia or even realizing that dyslexia is what makes reading or spelling or conversation more challenging for them than their peers. Many, however, know full well what dyslexia is and how it makes their daily trek to the classroom so daunting. Imagine sitting in a classroom trying to read your assignment, but the words float on the page. Now imagine those floating words are in a second language. Students with dyslexia often struggle immensely with learning a second language. If they do get through 2 or 3 years of a spoken second language, the information is not likely retained, so effectively useless. Imagine now giving students the option to learn a computer language or learn to code. Not only will students with dyslexia be more likely to find success in the classroom, the information learned will be useful in our ever more digital world, providing them with a meaningful skill. During the next legislative session, you may hear about dyslexia screeners or notifying parents about school services their students receive, or even a plea to allow students to count computer coding toward their high school foreign language requirement. Please take note. Dyslexia needs your attention and our students need your support. When you hear dyslexia, please take action. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher-Maltese? Carly? Okay. Duke Dunn, is Duke here? Okay, you will be next. Mr. Radel, is he here? Will Radel? Okay. All right, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Carly Fisher-Maltese, and I am a Fairfax resident. I'm on the Early Childhood Education faculty at George Mason University and also assist with program development in Fairfax County Public Schools. I'm here today to communicate my support for several points of the governor's budget proposal. I've taught in both public schools, including Title I, and private school settings, and I have seen firsthand the achievement gap between students who have had the privilege of an early childhood education and those who have not. I support the additional $95 million in the budget for low-income families and children to attend preschool. These additional funds are critical to increase the Virginia Preschool Initiative per pupil amount to $6,959 in fiscal year 21 and $7,655 in fiscal year 22. These funds also will make it possible to serve additional 3-year-olds. At Mason, I work in a teacher preparation program whose mission is to prepare educators to serve diverse children and their families. We are dedicated to preparing professional educators to address the teacher shortage in the state. In fact, with the passing of new regulations, we now have undergraduate pathways to teacher licensure with our new BSED in Early Childhood Education for Diverse Learners program. Additionally, we have partnered with Northern Virginia Community College, NOVA, to make more affordable pathways for educators with a new 2+2 model, 2 years at a community college and then a seamless transition to a 4-year university. I have seen the financial burden on many of our students as they work to earn their credentials, often while working full-time and having a family at home. I am in support of more affordable pathways for early childhood educators who will not be earning a doctor's or lawyer's salary at the other end of their program. Importantly, this initiative also has the potential to increase the diversity of the teaching workforce. Last, I'm in support of the additional $8 million over 2 years to increase the early childhood educator incentive created through the Preschool Development Grant. Incentives such as this will attract more people to the profession and ensure higher quality programs for children. Thank you so much.
Okay. Welcome,
Yes,
Mr. Dunn.
Thank you. Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes, my name is Duke Dunn, and I've been a resident of Northern Virginia for over 40 years. And I'm also a Vietnam-era veteran, and I had PTSDs. And I took pills, and I felt like the pills they prescribed to me, I felt like a yo-yo. And so now I'm doing an alternative of cannabis. And I feel good. I'm doing better. I feel manic. I'm feeling healthy and not suicidal like a lot of my fellow veterans and other people. And the laws basically wreck lives and jobs and what have you. And that, let's see, and in fact, let's see. And so after 6 foreclosures, 3 bankruptcies, and a divorce, and now doing better, I'm actually about to start a new business, working on it for studio, gallery, and hemp goodies, and hats, and flags, and shirts, and novelties for the cause, because this cause is wrong. As you all should know now, as the National Gallup polls show that 66% of Americans say legalize marijuana, cannabis. It's true name. And that Virginia's rating is 61% now that says legalized. So it would be helpful if y'all would basically follow your constituents and support the bills that we have that's coming up with Lee Carter and Steve Herrick for legalization, and also decrim bills, and also Adam Evan for decrim, because this law is wrong, and we the people are getting kind of tired of it, because it's just holding us back, and it's just wrong. And that, and I'm also representing a group called the SOS PAC, which is Saving Our Society, pulling all communities together for just causes, and also VAMJ now, which is part of DMV MJ, Marijuana Justice, because you have DC MJ, you have MDMJ, and now you got VAMJ, because the people of Virginia are getting fed up, and they want action, and they want it legal, and they want decrim as well. And that, let's see. And I'm supporting the rights of cannabis consumers, cultivation, workers, patients, and their families. And so through the SOS PAC and others, we're networking for the people to share photos and education of the communities where the work of the legalization is taking place. And on my Facebook of the SOS PAC, there's over 400 photo events showing mainly hemp and cannabis. And also Water is Life, because I was a veteran for Standing Rock. I went out there and we stopped the pipelines. That's another thing. I'm for the Green Deal, because the Green Deal actually, if you legalize cannabis, you can help fund it, actually. Call it a solar tax, token tax, or marijuana cannabis tax, whatever you want, but it would help with the cause and help with funding it as well. And that, let's see, I said this since. And what got me started was actually LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, which is now Law Enforcement Action Partnership, because I was with a fraternal order of police, and they were speaking at a normal event, the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws. These shirts say cops want to legalize pot. Asked me why, and they said for the benefit of our kids, so they don't get in trouble.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. So
Mr.
please support
Gunn.
our laws.
Okay. All right. Is Mr. Rattle, is he here? R-A-D-L-E, Radel? Okay. Tim Hannigan? Mr. Hannigan here? Welcome, Mr. Hannigan.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you for taking the time out here and listening to local citizens.
Sure.
It's great. Been a long day. Let me come quickly to the point. I ask you all to vote down any legislation that comes before the General Assembly this year that deals with transferring authority for zoning and land use regulation from the local level to the state level. I think it would be an absolute huge mistake. Why do I say that? Good governance basically revolves around the principle of governments addressing topics that they're best suited to address. And so that's why you have the federal government addressing national defense. And that's why you have the state government addressing highway transportation and topics like that. And that's why traditionally in the United States of America, local governments have been responsible for zoning. And that's so people like this can go before their local supervisor in an easy way, not have to drive to Richmond, and talk to them about their neighborhood concerns, which is what zoning is all about. Exactly. And I was going to raise that point. I think your time is better spent. It's a complex issue, as you know. Many of you have worked at the local level. So it's environment, it's transportation, it's schools. There's a whole bunch of things. And there's no question in my mind and the mind of most people that dealing with that at the local level is far superior. And as you just said, I think the state government can spend their time in a much better way and more productive way by working at that level. So I leave you with that. I ask you to please keep zoning and land use regulation at the local level and get on with handling the bigger affairs of the state. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next is Arnold Pachtman. Is Mr. Pachtman here? Yes, sir. Okay, come on down. And David Custer, you'll follow him. Okay, welcome, Mr. Pachtman.
Thank you, sir. I'm Arnold Pachtman. I live in Mount Vernon District. Honorable senators and delegates, when are you going to stand up for Virginia's 1.5 million law-abiding gun owners and 500,000 concealed handgun permit holders? Many of us live in Fairfax County too, and we are your constituents. So please hear me. We do not need more gun control, especially not the useless and destructive assault weapon ban, universal background checks, magazine ban, and red flag laws that Governor Northam is pushing. If any of these measures worked, Baltimore, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. would be the safest places on earth. Instead of, please let me finish. Instead of free fire zones. Virginia has a history of strong Second Amendment support. It's the 4th safest state in the nation for public safety without the governor's draconian gun control laws. And we'd like to keep it just that way. Thank you. You don't have to look far for supporting evidence. Only the past week, on December 29th in the West Freeway Church in Fort Worth, Texas, a maniac with murder on his mind opened fire with a shotgun on parish members. 2 people were murdered in that 4-second-long killing spree, and which was stopped by a single bullet fired by a member of the church security ministry, Jack Wilson. Mr. Wilson was armed and trained to stop the threat and save lives, and he did so magnificently. But Mr. Wilson was not a superhero. Any of the armed members of the church security ministry, and indeed many of the armed law-abiding citizens in this room, would have taken care of business that day and saved lives. Contrast that to an incident the very night before, on December 28th in Muncie, New York, where a Jew-hating maniac armed with an 18-inch machete butchered 5 Hasidic Jews celebrating Hanukkah in their synagogue. 71-year-old Joseph Newman was attacked with such ferocity that the machete cut through his skull and brain. Rabbi Newman is currently on life support and is not expected to survive, and the other victims are recovering in hospital. If even one person in that congregation was armed, he could have stopped the threat and saved this holy man's life and the other innocents. Okay. Do you want to, I'm almost done, sir. Okay. Do you want to make Virginia safer? Go after the criminals and mentally ill, and leave law-abiding citizens and our guns alone. For good reason, the state motto of our beloved Commonwealth of Virginia is Sic Semper Tyrannis, thus always to tyrants. Represent Virginia values, not California. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Custer. Let me just say that Leslie Rent. Leslie? It's okay. Yeah, they had R-E-N-T. It's K-E-N-T. Okay, you'll be next. Welcome, Mr. Custer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senators and delegates. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I am David Custer. I'm represented by Senator Howell and Delegate Delaney, who apparently had to move on to one of these other sessions. First, I'd like to welcome you to the safest room in Fairfax County today. With that in mind, I would like to try and get through a few points in the 3 minutes that I have.
Sure.
First and foremost, not one of the proposed bills on gun control would have impacted the tragedies of Virginia Beach or Virginia Tech. I would ask the legislature to stop using those tragedies to justify bills that would not have affected those events at all, even had they been in place at the time. Delegate Corey has moved on, but I also want to address rule. We should not have to surrender our Second Amendment rights to practice our First Amendment rights. We are doing that today. We are doing that safely today. You've got a room full of armed people, and there is zero threat. Also, I don't think we should be passing a rule that's going to ban things in property, especially the exterior of it. Inside the building, I would have issues with that as well, but that would be a different area. The primary issue there also as well is to consider that in Richmond alone, between January 1st and the end of September, 183 guns were stolen from cars in Richmond. If we are not allowed to bring our firearms into Capitol Square or into the building, we are going to have to leave them in our vehicles, which creates a target-rich environment for criminals, and will put more stolen guns on the streets in the hands of criminals. Unfortunately, Delegate Corey is left, but I'd like an explanation to why city and county treasurers and deputy commissioners of the Virginia Workers' Comp Committee are special, and they are allowed to carry in those areas where myself, who has a CCW permit and have had for over 20 years, would not be permitted to do so. Also realize that it's not going to be effective. The legislators and guests can walk right past the metal detectors and don't have to go through that. Point you back to 2003 shooting of James Davis in New York, where he walked his killer right past the metal detectors there. And also point out that in the building, under current rules and laws, only CCW holders are allowed to carry firearms, and they've all been vetted through that process of obtaining a CCW. Senator Sassol, you've heard the objections to your assault weapons ban. We would, of course, ask that you withdraw that bill, but I'd also like to point out a few other things. In Virginia, according to the FBI, there were only 11 deaths in 2017 from all rifles, not just what are being defined as assault firearms, but all. And in 2018, that dropped to 8. These are not a problem in Virginia because that's all rifles. It's not just the assault weapons, which is going to be smaller than that. As for your registration proposal to do the ban but allow the registration, first and foremost, criminals cannot be asked to do that versus via the Supreme Court decision in Haynes v. U.S., they cannot be required to register, so if they don't, they can't be prosecuted for it. Canada spent $2 billion before they abandoned their failed registration system. And one final point, sure. Connecticut and New York are seeing below 10% compliance with registration requirements. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Welcome, Mr. Kent. And is Rebecca Henson here? Yeah, you'll be next. Welcome, Mr. Kent.
Good morning. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I was born in Billings, Montana, and the Navy decided to bring me to Norfolk for the very first time in the mid-'70s. I'd visit my mom and dad on the weekends and swore I'd never move to Northern Virginia because the traffic was crazy. In 1980, I became a Virginia resident because my company moved me to McLean to work. I moved to Fairfax County in 1986. All my kids were born here, and I really appreciate Fairfax County school boards because my daughter was learning disabled, and she went into a program, and now she is serving her country overseas.
Good.
And that's really important. But I came here to talk because I have a concealed carry permit, and it's really important to me because I learned in the Boy Scouts to handle firearms. In high school, I learned to fire M14s at a summer camp at Fort Carson. In the Navy, I learned to operate firearms. I am qualified. I will run towards a shooting if I can to try to prevent it. My two neighbors are Fairfax County police officers. They will do the same thing. I think most of the men in this room will support trying to save lives. I carry because I want to save the life of my family, my neighbors, my county residents, and my state residents. I am now a Virginia resident for life. It's very important that I look at that seal right there. In 1742, Fairfax County became a special entity as a county. 34 years later, the United States passed the law of independence against England. Then we passed the Constitution. The Second Amendment, the second highest law in this country, is the right to bear arms. If you ban assault weapons, you ban guns with magazines greater than around 10 rounds, you're preventing me from defending my family. You're preventing me from defending my state. I really ask that you consider this, that you've heard so many people testify that they need money. The governor right now is wanting to take $7 million to hire 18 more state troopers. He wants to pass laws that's going to spend a lot of money on law enforcement that's going to take them away from their job, to come after me, to tell me that I can't own a weapon. And that's wrong. The Constitution gives me the right to bear arms. I want you to support that right. The Constitution of Virginia also supports that right. So do what's right. You have so many people here that need money. Go back to Richmond, pass the laws that will help them. But don't spend any money on trying to take my weapon away from me. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Ms. Henson, you of course are up. And next, Wally Kubitz. Wally here? All right, if Mr. Kubitz, are you Mr. Kubitz? Okay, you're on deck. Okay? All right, welcome, Ms. Henson.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Henson, and I live in Herndon, Virginia, and I'm a retired federal employee. I didn't want to be here today. I shouldn't have to be here today. But I decided that I couldn't stand by any longer and watch evil chip away at my freedom and do nothing. Let's just set aside the fact that gun control laws don't work because the only people who would obey them are safe, law-abiding citizens. Let's talk about freedom. Freedom. Not long ago on TV, I saw a young woman being interviewed about gun violence, and she said, "Isn't safety more important than freedom?" That statement shocked me. It made me realize that there are a lot of people in this country that take their freedom for granted and really don't have any concept of what freedom means. People have been fighting and dying for their freedom since the beginning of mankind. Freedom is risky business. Freedom requires diligence to keep it. This country is the greatest country in the world because of freedom. Those who don't have freedom think of nothing else. Freedom is everything. You who are proposing these gun control laws say they are constitutional. That is a lie. If you continue to chip away at our Second Amendment civil right until it no longer exists, which right will be next? Let's not be cowards. Let this nation continue to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kubitz, you're up. Just 1 second. Chester, is it Boulos? Chester Boulos?
Who are the 3 individuals that you moved to the back?
Borey, Whalen, and Berglund.
Okay, I'm speaking on my father's behalf, Lawrence Whalen, Holmes Whalen, Fairfax resident.
That'll be at the end. Yeah. Yes, this is a Fairfax County public hearing, period. Yes. But I will allow the people who don't live in the county to speak, but the Fairfax County residents come first. Okay. All right, sir, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you for having this meeting. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Looking at the big picture for a moment, we as a nation, not just as a state, but as a nation, are facing a number of challenges. For example, we have foreign rivals like Iran, Russia, China, who are building their military and testing our resolve. Here at home, we have bitter divisions amongst ourselves that at times have boiled over into violence. Monetarily, we have an enormous federal debt that could burst at any time and put us into a depression. We've had natural disasters like wildfires, flooding, earthquakes some years ago. Even Virginia, of all places, had an earthquake. We've had health issues as well, such as the hidden epidemic of sexually transmitted disease. Lots of problems. And obviously, you folks can't fix all those problems, and we understand that. But there is another side to this that you can have something to do with. That other side concerns the God whose blessing this legislature and other legislatures invoke in prayer. And some would say, oh, that's just a formality, it doesn't mean anything, it's just a tradition. I beg to differ. In actuality, this God can help or can allow our problems to get worse. Which will it be for Virginia? Right now, there are a number of bills before this legislature in which you are being asked to endorse and force others to endorse the God-cursed abomination of homosexuality and its first cousin, the transgender movement. These are the very things that will multiply our problems and make them worse, and that will bring the curse and judgment of Almighty God down on this Commonwealth and on individual legislators who vote in favor of homosexuality and transgenderism. The Bible says in Psalm 9:17, "The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God." And sadly, I think we are on that path. The question is, how far along? When you go to Richmond shortly, your vote on these critical issues can either help us or hurt us. I beg you to avoid putting your endorsement on any kind of bill that would favor transgenderism or homosexuality. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Chester, is it Boulos? All right, not here. Keith?
My name, I'm an Annandale resident. We talked before about being from Fairfax. I didn't put an address, though. I was wondering if, it's Tom Boney.
What's your name?
Tom Boney, was second or third on the...
You had it's Arlington. It says here, 3000 South Randolph Street, apartment 710, Arlington, Virginia.
Former address, I have my driver's license. It's now in Annandale.
All right, come.
Sir, I'm not trying to lie.
Now, come on up then.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'd like to thank all of you for this marathon session of sitting through and listening to everybody.
All right.
It's very nice to be able to speak to
That's
the people.
why we get the big bucks of $18,000 a year.
All right. I would just like to share my experiences in terms of the proposed gun legislation. I came down from New Jersey, so I'm familiar with a lot of the gun laws being proposed, and it has an A+ rating from the Gifford Foundation with the gun laws that were put in there. It doesn't go as far, excuse me, the laws you're putting in doesn't go as far as getting up to what New Jersey has, but the experiences there, what I can share with you is having lived around and worked in and lived in urban centers in New Jersey, is that it did nothing for violent crime. The people of Newark, where I had the most experience studying, one student was shot at a red light coming back from National Guard duty. They're not permitted to carry weapons. I know a neighbor of mine, their nephew lived in Newark. The people will often procure a firearm to protect themselves in public at the risk of being sent to jail. And this particular nephew, after their arrest, was sent to jail and then beaten in their prison cell and had died. It doesn't do anything to fight the violent crime. In terms of what else I don't see as being all that effective, this silencer ban, if you will, the level of noise that the firearms produce, if I use it, if I can use that to protect my family, could rupture eardrums of me and my family as well, making us victims multiple times over. And while we're talking about the noise levels, even with the suppressor, that noise level can be compared to, and I'm not exaggerating, you can Google this one, the level of an aircraft carrier deck when aircraft are taking off for certain firearms. It's not a silencer in any such degree. I don't see these achieving much of anything. I see it expending energy, time, and money for something that's not going to have any result. In addition to what I saw as the fumbled high-capacity rollout in New Jersey. They proposed a law at first that would have made on-duty officers felons for carrying their duty weapons. So please don't go down that road of having a fumbled rollout of this one. I respect that you're saying you can make amendments to them. I would encourage you to consider what the actual effect is going to be. The '94 assault weapons ban showed no effect on violent crime. And as you can see, there's a lot of passion. And my fear is my favorite novel, Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein makes the monster. The monster just wanted to be loved, to contribute to the community. It speaks French, knows poetry, dance, appreciate music, contributes to handicapped and lower income families. And what turned the monster off was being rejected when they were only asking for the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can see the passion here. These laws don't achieve anything. There's data to back that up. So please don't waste your time and energy. Give it to these people that are looking for caretakers for higher pay. Do it for other things. But please, you're dividing in a very divided country at this point when people are openly talking about civil war, and it scares me. I don't want that to happen. You all came together to help this citizen who needed help coming down the stairs. We can do that, but let's not do it in a way that hurts and alienates people. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one more time, Mr. Chester Boulos. Okay. Next is Keith Bailey. Keith Bailey, going once, going twice. No Keith Bailey. Next is Robert Jeffrey. Okay, Mr. Jeffrey, come on down. And is John Furman here? Here, sir. Okay, you're on deck. All right. If you want, you can sit in one of the front rows here. After John Furman would be Brian Farish. Brian here? Brian Farish? Okay. All right, go ahead, sir. You're up.
Thank you for holding the meeting. Delegate Plum and Senator Howell, I am your constituent, although you don't represent me. I'm a gun owner.
Is he Keith Bailey?
Let me give you a really quick history. I joined the Navy in Keene, New Hampshire in 1974. It's the first time I took the oath at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I repeated that oath 4 more times. I served for a total of 20 years in the Navy. As I was coming here, my neighbor, who is a naturalized citizen from Malaysia, who is also the only Muslim chaplain in the county messaged me and told me that I should speak with my passion, but because her husband was away, she was thankful that I was in the neighborhood. I'm a certified pistol instructor. I'm also a certified range safety officer. The only people that I have ever taught have been women and minorities because they need the protection just as much as I do. I'm 65 years old. I have 2 bad knees, I have 2 bad shoulders, and I have a bad elbow. Senator Saslaw, I want to know under what authority that you have to dictate to me how I protect myself, what tool did I use in order to protect my family and the people here. Thank you.
All right. You're Mr. Furman?
Senator, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Just one sec. You're Mr. Furman, right?
I am, sir.
Okay, and then Brian Farish? Brian Farish. No Brian Farish. You Brian Farish? No, okay. All right, Mr. Furman, welcome.
Thank you, sir. I want to compliment you on your endurance because this meeting ranks up there with some of the longest I've ever attended. I'm a 15-year veteran of the Pentagon, and I understand your pain. So let's talk a little bit about...
Not a problem. Not a problem.
So let's talk a little bit about gun control. I think there is a middle way ahead on this topic that doesn't require some of the measures that have already been introduced by yourself and others. And I had the conversation that we've had that talks about, you know, registration or banning particular types of weapons or magazines or, God forbid, confiscation, things like that, I think are going to be far too divisive to be actually laws that you can implement in the Commonwealth. And I think we all share your concern about public safety, understand where you're coming from on this topic. I think the right course ahead would be to adopt those procedures that allow you to maintain, you know, public safety as it needs to be without making felons out of thousands of your fellow citizens who have done nothing wrong. So I'm a gun owner, and I would be happy, you know, if it were required to perhaps obtain a permit for these sorts of things. And I realize the crowd behind me is going to say no, but we have concealed carry weapon permits now that are issued on a shall issue basis within the Commonwealth. And if you were hell-bent for passing gun control legislation, I do recommend that you do not, but if this is on the agenda and it must be done, then I think the simplest approach to ensure public safety would be a permitting process to make sure that highly destructive weapons are in the right hands. Now, I would also offer, as a consideration of that, that under the Constitution, the Second Amendment talks about a well-organized militia. I would also then offer the organization of a militia at the Virginia level, at the county level, say that those who possess, you know, assault weapons, if you care to define them as such, would be part of a loosely organized militia within the state. This has some advantages of offering other law enforcement capability to the counties in a case where you would have an extreme emergency, and it would give you the opportunity to turn gun owners from being opponents of your legislation into folks that might actually support that legislation. I, for one, as a retired military officer, would be happy to serve again in some capacity in a Virginia militia. So I think you really ought to think this through. I think it is a fool's errand to try to register or manage guns. There are far too many of them here, and all gun owners that I'm aware of are going to refuse to cooperate in that kind of a scheme. And what you risk there is engendering a lot of civil disobedience that otherwise normal law-abiding citizens would not do. So I'd ask you to consider that as you look at your legislation and give the proposal of a revitalized militia some thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. One more time, Brian Farish. Okay, going. Nick. Nick LaRolla. I'm on number 16. Is Nick LaRolla here? Okay. Maurice Skinner? Come on, you're up.
Call the next one.
And following Maurice Skinner, Matt Truong? Is Matt Truong here? Okay, Mr. Skinner, you're up. What about Hank Waters? Yes. Hank, where are you? Okay, you'll follow Mr. LaRolla.
No, Mr.
Skinner. Mr. Skinner.
Okay. Good afternoon, delegates and representative senators. My name is Ed Skinner. I'm a resident in District 35 and House District 53. So Senator Saslaw, Leader Saslaw, you're a representative of mine, and Mr. Simon, Delegate Simon, thank you. Behind me are my wife and my son. They're here to be emotionally supportive for me, but also to let you know that it's not just me, but it's a number of people. I also speak on behalf. I'm a volunteer lobbyist for VCDL and also a lifelong member of the NRA. But either way, I speak to you today on the matter of the upcoming legislative session. I wish you all good luck and deliverance in your considerations for the various legislation that's been proposed. I'd like to express my objection to the pre-filed bills that threaten my Second Amendment and constitutional rights and those of my colleagues who are Second Amendment supporters. I'm concerned about the influence in Virginia of the outside influence. You've spoken today, and you've expressed very dearly to us that you're concerned about the citizens here in Fairfax. Why does Michael Bloomberg have anything to do with making donations to our executive leaders to influence our local policy? Please consider that. Please consider that. He should not have a hand in making legislation that represents us. But anyway, the pre-filed bills, including SB 16 and the 140 other pieces of legislation that have been pre-filed and are under consideration, are threatening to me. They're broadly offensive and derogatory towards our constitutional rights. Statistically, they pose to be potentially ineffective and unsupporting in reducing crime, violent crime in particular. The fact that you heard the statistic before today that we're the fourth safest state in the nation, that's a very attractive data point for attracting businesses and citizens and families here. Let's keep it that way. By passing strict legislation against gun ownership, personal protection, and my ability to exercise my Second Amendment, that has the potential for, if that's implemented broadly, it could wind up impacting adversely the safety of other citizens here. Either way, so I urge you and request that you oppose and withdraw support for all firearms bills that are before you and to vote and support your laws instead towards enforcing the enforcement against violent crime. Thank you very much and good luck in this upcoming session.
Thank you. Thank you. You're Mr. Trong?
Hank Waters.
Oh.
Hank Waters.
Number 19.
Oh, okay. Trong, that's right. Trong's not here. Hank Waters. Christopher Seidel is here. You're going to be next. Okay. Okay, Mr. Waters, you're up.
Good morning. Or afternoon, actually. I certainly offer the diocese the opportunity to stand up. This feels pretty good, and I offer that to you in the back, too. It feels pretty good to stand up. It's been a long day. I thank you for the fact that we have the opportunity as citizens to speak to all of you at one time, and I do appreciate that. The diversity of subjects, I come here really as a parent and as a citizen that says many before me have already spoken about some of the most important citizens of our county, and they are the most disadvantaged. And I would have to encourage you that you continue to fund and continue to support the bills and budgets that support the ARC, the community services boards. And quite honestly, there is an underlying action here that is happening, and I'm seeing it. I have 2 children who are handicapped and have been, one has received a DD waiver. The other one has been on the list now for only 18 years. Hasn't been too long. But the reality is that the ability for the workers to actually hold those jobs is becoming almost untenable. And what I've noticed, you have to say, what are the underlying currents you see? Most of the workers don't even live here. They can't afford to live in our county. They can't afford to, they live, quite honestly, across the river. Most of them commute in from Maryland now. They don't actually live here. They can't afford to live in this county in these jobs and so forth. And I will tell you that you notice the care difference, not because of they're not caring people, but simply when you have to travel 2 hours to get to work, you start to find other work and you start to drop out of the business. And I do think that it's very important that you recognize that the long-term health of those workers is important. What they earn for a living, the fact that we find a way that they can have benefits, some benefits that says, well, when you retire or you can finish this career, that you have a way forward as a citizen, I think that's pretty important. And I would hope that you would consider those things as we look forward. And quite honestly, it's something that is important to us. I'm a member of the American Legion here in Fairfax, and as some of you may be aware, we're about to redevelop our land and actually install 76 affordable housing units, simply for the purpose of knowing that it is in dire need in this county. Median income has moved up to about $117,000. You can't make $32,000 a year and live in this county, all right? And so when we think about what we're doing, we need to do something that helps the citizens that we need to help us. All right? I ask that you consider that this year in Richmond. Good skill, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seidel? Okay, and on deck is Jim McCormick here. Jim McCormick, going once, going twice. And after that would be Juliana Borba. Okay. All right, well, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Seidel. I've been a Fairfax County resident for 20 years. I'm also the father of 2 young children in Fairfax County Public Schools. My comments today are in regard to the various gun control bills that have been proposed for the 2020 session, but first I want to speak a little bit about the tone of this debate. You've already heard from several people today that will stand on shall not be infringed, period, full stop, and I understand that. But I'm a gun owner and a Second Amendment supporter, and I also believe that there are things that can be done that would not infringe on the rights of law-abiding citizens. On the other side of this debate, you hear things like, how many dead bodies will it take? And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but that's what we hear all the time. This comment is not only insulting, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it shuts down debate by creating a false binary. If you're not for getting rid of guns, you're okay with dead children, and that's simply not true. I've told my wife many times that if I thought for even a moment that giving up my firearms would keep our or your children any safer, I'd be the first in line. But I don't believe that it would make anyone safer because I'm a responsible, law-abiding gun owner. Like so many others here, my guns are always stored, transported, and used in the safest possible manner. And turning hundreds of thousands of Virginians into felons overnight will not make anyone safer, sir. Those who favor stricter gun control typically say, but you don't propose any viable solutions of your own. And I don't think most of the solutions to this problem are legislative ones, but that's what we're talking about today. So that's what I'll speak about. Right now, would-be criminals are not afraid of the penalties for using a gun in the commission of the crime. They just aren't. And this is understandable when they see other criminals able to plead down to lesser crimes or get off with lighter sentences. We should adopt a zero-tolerance policy for the use of a gun in the commission of a crime. No plea bargains, no light sentences, no early parole, period. Legislation like this would target criminals rather than law-abiding citizens. I'm also for some legislation that stiffens the penalties for unsafe storage, transport of the use of firearms, because these would target irresponsible gun owners. This law and zero-tolerance policy I just mentioned should seek to make it unthinkable for anyone to carry a gun to commit a crime or be negligent with a gun. And most important, they don't target people that aren't hurting anyone or otherwise putting anyone at risk. They target criminals and the criminally negligent. I also support some background checks for private sales. I know that many pro-Second Amendment folks here are concerned about these proposals, and I understand that, but we can and should find a solution for background check systems that verify the purchaser is allowed to own the firearm, but also protects the privacy of the seller or the purchaser as consistent with the U.S. Constitution. We also need to follow up on those that fail background checks. This is not something that we're doing today. I have several other ideas, but my time is limited. Gun violence is something that will require us to come together, to listen to one another, and to find workable solutions that will actually address the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't love guns. I'm almost done. I love my children, I love my wife, and I love the liberty I have to protect them at all costs. Restricting my right to do that will not save one life, but it very well could cost lives that mean the world to me, and it really is that simple. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Seidel. Can I ask your name?
I'm Juliana Borba of
You
Fairfax County.
are. And hold off 1 second. Jim McCormick, one more time. He's not here. Okay, Ms. Borba, you're up. And William Henson? Is William Henson here? All right. What about Robert Whitfield? Let me just keep going. You'll get your full 3 minutes, okay? Amy Bergman? Simone Walker? Yes. Okay, if nobody else, the other people don't come in a hurry, you're going to be next, okay? All right, Ms. Borba, you're up. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi. My best friend's daughter has cerebral palsy.
Has what?
Has cerebral palsy. I've witnessed firsthand the level of care required to keep her strong. I heard teachers begging for funding to provide care for the future generation of children. I've gone door knocking and spoke to a family who's told me mental health facilities turn their difficult son away. They're worried they'll die and their son end up in prison because that's the only kind of facility left for him. This state has real problems that need to be focused on. I hear the terms gun sense and common sense, but I never see any of these groups or their supporters that are against guns actually show any common sense or gun sense on the subject. Isn't it common sense to teach children gun safety? 150 million guns won't go away, and a gun ban won't make guns disappear. No matter how many guns get confiscated or burned up, people will find a way to make weapons. Isn't that common sense? Let's teach the new generations real gun sense, safety, training, responsibility, accountability, the importance and the history. Guns should be ingrained into society better than this. We are a nation suffering from mental health issues, drug issues, and depression. The epidemic isn't the gun, it's the lack of education, understanding, and true common sense. Virginia is home to lots of military and police who put their lives on the line to serve and protect. These are people with families of their own and put their lives on the line to protect ours. These same people will be labeled felons with the governor's proposed bills. He's requesting our tax dollars to label us felons. Isn't it common sense to see he's trying to rob us and call us criminals? I wasn't born in America. Isn't it common sense to look around the world and see the pattern of gun confiscation as giving the government too much power? I'm asked by my family all the time if I want to go back to Brazil. I choose to be an American. I choose to live in this country where the Constitution is the law. I didn't realize people like the governor or these groups like Moms Demand, Everytown, and their supporters could break the law but label me the felon. Please protect our rights, oppose gun control, and spend our tax dollars on issues that will actually positively impact the lives of Virginians. Thank you very much.
Thank you. just one more time, William Henson, Robert Whitfield, Amy Bergman. Okay. Ms. Walker, you're up. And following Ms. Walker is Holmes Whalen. Holmes Whalen here? Holmes, that's you? Okay, you're going to be next. And following Holmes Whalen will be Etta Berglund. Is she here? Etta Berglund? No. All right, Ms. Walker, you're up. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm here to ask for your support for HB 332, Reading Diagnostic Tests and Intervention. Literacy is a civil right, and the ability to read is the equity issue of our time. 1 in 6 children who are not reading proficiently in 3rd grade do not graduate from high school on time, a rate 4 times greater than that for proficient readers. Graduation rates for Black and Hispanic students who are not proficient readers in 3rd grade lag far behind those for white students with the same reading skills. The dominant approach to teaching reading in most schools relies on a 3-cueing model, which provides no avenue for weak readers to close the gap with their same age peers. Multiple studies indicate that over 60% of juveniles in the justice system qualify for special education, and nearly 50% of federal inmates are dyslexic. The inability to read at a basic or proficient level is a direct route along the school-to-prison pipeline, where Blacks and Hispanics are disproportionately represented. The National Assessment of Educational Progress highlights a consistent drop in the Virginia's reading tests and reveals that by 8th grade, just before entering high school, 2/3 of the Virginia students aren't proficient readers. Black and Hispanic students fare the worst in these results and are disproportionately impacted. The Phonological Assessment Literacy Screener, or PALS, which is VDOE's current method of screening K through 3 students for reading difficulty, misses a large number of students and is ineffective at flagging students at risk for dyslexia or other reading disabilities. As such, too many students go unidentified and do not get the appropriate intervention. These students, by the time their disability is discovered, never close the achievement gap. The rapid automatized naming, or rapid alternating stimulus, which is the RAN-RAS diagnostic screener that HB 332 adds to PALS, is proven to identify students at risk for dyslexia and other reading disabilities that PALS does not. The evidence-based structured literacy instruction that HB 332 requires is based on the science of reading and is proven the most effective for struggling readers, but benefits all students. HB 332 will prevent a lot of students from needing special education. HB 332 is the equalizer to educational equity in literacy, leading to greater academic success and economic equity. We cannot have a meaningful discussion about criminal justice reform without first addressing literacy. Thank you. And I'd like to say Senator Howell is my senator. And I'm here representing the Arlington NAACP Education Committee. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Whalen? You're Mr. Whalen, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Holmes Whalen. My father and I moved to Virginia from D.C. and did so because Virginia's gun laws, until now, had been written by individuals familiar with firearms who clearly understood the following. There's no such thing as an assault weapon or an assault firearm as described in Senator Saslaw's bill, SB 16. It's a phrase created by the media and others who, simply put, do not know what they're talking about. Every American has a right to protect him or herself in public as he sees fit. The safety of judges, prosecutors, lawmakers, and governors with armed security details is just as important as the safety of the working man and his family. We should limit, not expand, gun-free zones. Many believe that law-abiding citizens who saved over 200 lives in Texas last week shouldn't have been armed at all. This is surreal. But let's talk turkey and speak frankly. We're here today to zealously advocate for the right to defend ourselves and our families on our terms as we see fit. And we are speaking to a delegation of lawmakers in deep blue Fairfax County, often patrons and co-patrons of the legislation which either etches away at or, in Senator Saslaw's case, obliterates entirely our right to do just that. Are we going to succeed at helping you understand that the policy initiatives you're pursuing will be wholly ineffective at accomplishing your stated goals of safety and peace? Maybe, maybe not. I hope so. And I hope some of our words stick with you when you head down to Richmond and start moving legislation through your respective chambers. The fact is that none of the gun control proposals that are being pushed have demonstrated success in other states. Not in Colorado, where the state passed the magical 10-round mag capacity limit and universal background checks back in 2013. Violent crimes increased 25% since that time. Not in Maryland, after it passed the Firearm Safety Act in 2013. Baltimore's gun homicide rate increased by 50%. Not in New York, with massive noncompliance with the same gun control laws that have been pre-filed for consideration in Richmond this session. In the case that someone catches a gun charge in New York, a large majority of defendants are young black men without serious criminal histories who are facing years in prison for nonviolent possessory offenses. The war on drugs is being replaced by the war on crime, but it's still young minority men who are disproportionately impacted. If what has happened in other states is a model for the vast majority of enforcement, is the model here, the vast majority of enforcement will be in liberal urban centers like Richmond, Petersburg, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Roanoke, with Northern Virginia, Fairfax coming in close second. Again, charges will be for nonviolent possessory offenses, and the defendants will be young black and Hispanic men from Virginia's inner cities. Think about whether that's the type of change you are seeking. Further still, is forcing law-abiding Virginians like me to turn my AR, getting us close to safety and peace. I'm not naive to the fact that we're in Fairfax right now, and ridding the world of these military-style weapons, another inflammatory term, is a politically expedient talking point. But call me crazy, it doesn't seem to be very politically expedient to ignore the fact that over 90% of jurisdictions in Virginia are now Second Amendment sanctuaries, and the session hasn't even begun. Lawmakers are always in cycle. This is the kind of stuff that gets voters off the couch and to the precinct and causes landslides in the next election cycle. Think about what's going to happen before you go down this path. You may be safe here in Fairfax, but think about your colleagues in swing districts, whose defeat may quickly render the new majorities you enjoy in Richmond fruitless. Thanks again for your indulgence. I look forward to seeing you in Richmond later this month.
Okay, that pretty much wraps it up. I want to thank you all for, staying around, talking. We listened to you. I know you probably thought this session would never end, but it finally has, a little after 3. And again, thank you for taking up your whole Saturday to get your opinions and points across. Thank you.
Differently, a little more patience, a little more interaction, a little more hands-on.